Hey, all right. We are here. Let me grab my notes real quick. I'll be right back. All right, y'all. So, just want to make shoot a quick video. It's just helping a student, Leroy. Leroy's got an awesome deal he's working on, and it looks like the price might be right. And I realized I was answering for Leroy a question I get really often, especially here in the office. So let me go ahead and answer it. I don't want to say once and for all, but let me answer it for Leroy and for everybody else. A little video here. And that way, if you come across this, you can get your questions answered too. So here's the thing, auction deals. By the way, before I get into that, Jason Loucks here. Let me get this a little bit better. Jason Loucks here, founder of secretlender.com and creator of the Ultimate Foreclosure System, foreclosureinvestingsystem.com. All kinds of good stuff revolving in the world of real estate, getting financing for your deals, all that other good stuff. Let me put this a little bit lower. Why is this being weird? All right. Facebook is letting me shoot sideways again, so go for that. My last couple live videos, it made me turn the phone this way. I don't know what's up with that, but they're doing all right now. Auction deals. Big warning, okay? Do not make any bids on any auction deals until you know what you're dealing with. So here's the problem. When you get involved in an auction deal, you're very much what I'll call swimming with sharks, okay? What I mean by that is that's where the professionals go to play. That's where the big boys who have, deep pockets, plenty of money, all the cash they need to do their deals, that's where they get a lot of their properties from. And that doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad deals, but it does mean every time you get into an auction situation, you're bidding against a lot of other very skilled investors. Some of them can outspend you and, are willing to do that just to crush the competition, which is, sad but true. That's not how I operate, but a lot of people do, okay? So, that said, let me tell you, there's 3 things you need to know. 3 things before you get into any auction deal that without them, you're going to get hosed, okay? Again, you're swimming with sharks, so just know that going in. Number 1, sometimes you look at the price on an auction deal and it just looks phenomenal, okay? So, maybe you pull the comps on your property. I'm just making up an example, but it's a type of example I've seen many times. Leroy's deal, for example. There's lots of comps there around 240, 250, 260. This auction deal's asking 75. Well, if you pay 75 for a property, even if it needs substantial repairs, that once fixed up will have average comps at 250. It's not hard to see why it gets people's greed glands going, right? They get, it's a $100,000 deal or what, maybe more. $175,000 in equity. Of course, it's going to cost something to get that equity, right? To get the repairs done or not. It depends on how you do the deal. That's not the point. The point is, right, when I say you're swimming with sharks, I'm not just talking about the competition. So here's what happens on those auction deals. There's 3 things you need to know before you even understand what you're bidding on. By the way, I'm not talking about foreclosure auctions. I'm talking about I'm talking about auction sales that are not foreclosures, okay? Here's the thing. Number 1, in an auction system, well, the first thing you need to know, back up, before number 1, number 0, right? It's very much true that the more people there are who are aware of a deal, the more you're going to pay for that deal, okay? So if it's a really easy deal for you to find, sitting in your office, sitting on your butt in air conditioning, it's a really easy deal for anybody to find, sitting on their butt in the air conditioning or with the heat on, depending on where you are in the country, I guess. So what ends up happening is the easier a deal is to find, generally speaking, the more you're going to pay for it, all right? Which is why I always recommend my students, especially my beginning students, I always recommend that they start by generating their own unique leads, okay? In other words, you need to be talking to sellers that only you are talking to. If you're constantly having to outbid everybody else, if you're constantly going after listed properties that are available for anyone on the MLS, you're going to always be dealing with tons of competition. And the people I've known who tried to get into the real estate business and just could never get it off the ground and had all kinds of problems and struggles and everything else, they're always the people who want somebody else to go get every deal for them, somebody else to do the legwork of finding the deal and all that other stuff, okay? So just make your peace with talking to regular people about buying their houses, all right? They're going to be your best deals for a lot of reasons, but it should be pretty obvious that One of the main reasons they're your best deals is nobody else gets a commission. All right. So if you're talking directly to a seller versus a real estate agent brought you that deal, well, obviously the real estate agent is in it for a profit. So you're always going to end up paying more on those deals to the tune of whatever the agent's commission is. Okay. So it's just the nature of the beast. All right. Now that was number 0. Let me give you the real 3 big things you need to know, or when you get in there, you're going to have trouble. Okay. First thing, number 1 thing you need to know is, in the case of these auctions, especially the online auctions, who they're hoping the buyers are not from that area. All right. So sometimes you'll see stuff on an online auction where the price is just incredibly low compared to the comps. Well, what you may not know if you don't live there is that those properties are not really comparable. In other words, I have tons of students in places in the country, and I live in one of them too, where, you know, an old wooden shack might be in a neighborhood with $500,000 houses. Well, if you look at the bedrooms, bathrooms, and square footage, you say to yourself, well, oh, that thing's going to be worth, you know, a lot. But it's not, because it's not comparable to the other newer, nicer houses. All the local investors have already had a chance to look at that deal, and they know it's never going to sell for what it looks like on paper. Okay? That's why it's still available, and that's why it hasn't sold, because it is not similar to the comps. It is not comparable, even though the beds, baths, square foot, whatever, makes it look like it. You see this a lot in places where there's old, what we call stick built. They're old wooden houses. They're not, you know, they're not handmade like farmhouse. You know, this wood is like, you know, hard as a rock. No, they're quick built like farmhouses or whatever, and they're just never going to sell for what the house built in, you know, 2006 or whatever. You know, with concrete and steel and everything else, is always going to sell for more because it's a better quality house. Okay. You see that a lot, okay? But here's the thing. On those online auction sites, they're hoping that they're netting somebody who doesn't know the area. They're shooting to get somebody who doesn't know the area. And what they don't tell you is that when you make your offer on that property, many times, there's something you need to know before you make an offer, all right? I'm not even kidding around. 3 things you need to know before you make an offer. Number 1, it's very common, especially on the online sites, for them to screw with the process and require the buyer to pay the real estate agent, to pay the auctioneer, to pay the auction commission. And often that commission is 10% or more. In fact, industry standard, fairly standard in the industry, is 10%. So where you might pay a regular real estate agent, you know, 6% or 3% to the buyer's agent, 3% to the seller's agent, okay? And it's the seller's responsibility to pay that agent. On the auctions, on the auction sites, it's usually the buyer's responsibility to pay that agent. And it's usually a very high commission, like 10%. Okay? So before you make an offer, know that your actual real cost is already going to be 10% higher than whatever your offer was. So if you're offering $75,000 on a house you think is going to be worth $200,000 once it's all fixed up in an excellent condition, you're really offering $75,000 plus $7,500. Okay? $82,500. Might still be a really good deal. Depends on if it's really going to be worth that, you know, what are the repairs, all that other stuff. But if you don't know that, you just overpaid by $7,500. And that's before the bid runs up. Remember, if the bid runs up to $100,000, you're paying $110,000. If the bid runs up to $120,000, you're paying $132,000. Okay, 10% more than what your actual offer is, because if it's the buyer's responsibility and it's a 10% commission, you're paying 110%, whatever your offer was. Okay, plus fees. Many of those auction sites have a flat fee that they add on top, okay? So they'll have, for example, on our $75,000 offer, there's a 10% buyer's premium, a $5,000, you know, non-refundable earnest money deposit. I'm making this up, I don't know, this is an example, but it's pretty common to require $5,000 non-refundable earnest money. On top of that, you're paying 10% to the buyer's agent. On top of that, you're paying their standard fee, which if you click, you know, the little for rules and everything else of this auction, click here, they'll show you in tiny, you know, 2-point invisible print. You got to pay their $2,000 for this. You got to pay $1,500 for that. You got to pay all these different fees, okay? Now, if you know all that and it doesn't sneak attack you, okay, you can still, you know, build it into your offer, make sure you don't overpay, not get taken advantage of, okay? But if you don't know that, what's going to happen? They're going to take your earnest money deposit because you're not going to want to buy it because you realize after it's all said and done, you paid too much, okay? So you're going to lose $5,000 because you didn't read the fine print. Don't do that. Before you even make an offer, you need to know what is the buyer's premium, who pays the agent, and how much do they pay him. It's usually the buyer, okay? And what are all the extra fees, so that your offer isn't just what you're offering for the property. That's how they rope you in. And then they require a big earnest money deposit because they know you're never going to buy the place, so they're taking your $5,000. Okay? So it's a trick in the industry, and they're hoping somebody from out of town, makes an online offer, because that's all it is. Then they go to contract and they give up on their earnest money deposit, so they're making those earnest money deposits with a property that otherwise makes them nothing. Okay? Number 2, very common in those auctions, and you want to know this if it's the case, very common for there to be a reserve. What that means is there's a price at which they won't sell it. So the opening bid could be lower than what they'd be willing to sell it for. They're just using that first number, 75,000 in my example here. They're just using that number to get the greed glands going, to get people from all over the country or all over the area to get in there so that they can competitively bid against each other and put it up higher, okay? It does not mean that they would accept that first minimum offer. They may not be willing. They might be totally unwilling. For example, in our example, which is a real deal, they're asking $75,000. Well, with buyer's premium and fees, you're probably at $90,000 or so, close to it, $85,000, $90,000 already just getting in the door. What they're not telling you is they won't sell it for anything less than the 120 bid reserve, okay? I don't know what it is, by the way. They're not going to tell you what it is, because as soon as they tell you what it is, you think to yourself, well, that's the new minimum, because if I don't pay at least that, they're not going to sell it. They're just going to cancel the whole event, the whole auction, and start over to try again next time or whatever. That's called a reserve. If you don't know that there's a reserve, see, they don't have to tell you what the reserve is, but they should. I don't know, because some people are unscrupulous, especially, auction sites, auction engineers, whatever. They're supposed to tell you in the 2-point invisible, text. Good to see you guys. Thanks for the thumbs up. Anyway, in the 2-point invisible boilerplate text, they'll tell you if there's a reserve. Okay? So if there is a reserve, you want to know that there is a reserve. They wouldn't have a reserve if they were willing to take that initial offer. In other words, if $75,000 is the opening bid and they're willing to take $75,000, there's no reserve. It's called no reserve, okay? So when you get into it, you need to know, what am I really paying? Points, fees, commissions, all that other stuff. Is there a reserve? Is there a minimum above this opening bid that I'm going to have to pay? They're not going to tell you what the reserve is, but if you know there is a reserve, doesn't it sort of make sense that it's going to be near the cash numbers, right? So, it means they know the game and they know it's going to go for more than the opening bid, all right? That's number 2. Number 3, source. One of the things you need to know is, where did this property come from? Is it a REO that sat on the market forever and ever and ever, and now they're trying to sell it? Was it what they call a reel or a tape? See, here's what happens. A lot of these properties are from institutional buyers. So some hedge fund hedge fund makes it sound bigger than it probably is, but somebody who's buying tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of properties sight unseen, okay? A very big company that might, like the Blackwaters do for apartment buildings and shopping malls, but people do it on single family homes, or companies do it on single family homes, where they'll buy, say, $100 million worth of defaulted mortgages from Chase, or I don't know if Chase does that, but okay, the point is the same, from a large lender, okay? And then they go through and they, have a phone team or whatever, and they get on the phone and they try to do anything they can to work it out with people, if the people are still in the houses. Usually they're not, okay? Usually they're buying reels of already foreclosed on properties. It's just, they call them tapes because back in the day, it was like the microfilm reels, okay? Microfilm, film. Like in the 70s or 80s, okay? Nowadays, it's a computer program, but they just still call them tapes, or they still call them reels. It's just the industry, all right? And so they might buy $100 million worth of them, which might be 500 properties, and then, again, I'm making up numbers, right? But they'll go through that, and they'll take all the ones they can, immediately kind of liquidate, and that are, the good deals, is what I'm trying to tell you. The profitable deals, the ones that will sell at some price that makes it worth selling for them, because they buy them for pennies on the dollar. So, they're buying what might have been a house with a $100,000 mortgage on it that got foreclosed on 2 years ago. Well, they might buy it for $30,000. Okay, and then they go into it and they say, well, can we sell it as is? We'll sell it as is for 50,000, and they're happy because they make a profit on that one. However, when they get to the end of the reel, they sell their way through 100 million. They're going to sell off 20 million right away. They're going to make a profit on that, but they're still in the hole. They still need to make they still haven't got their 100 million back. Okay, then the next 60 million or so, they'll make a little bit. Now they'll be profitable. Now they've got $20 million worth of properties left that are crap. They're the worst of the worst. They're the bottom of the barrel of their properties, okay? What do? Well, they don't need to make a bunch of money on those properties, right? But they do need to make a profit. In other words, all the profit might be in those last 20% because they spent they got their 100 million back plus enough to make the whole thing worth doing. But now they've got all these properties and they don't know anything against them. They're not into them for anything, I should say. So they need to make some kind of money on them. Well, but they don't want to deal with it because this 20% takes as much time and effort as this 80%. So what do? They hire an auction company. And the auction company puts them on Hubzoo, puts them on My House Deals, puts them on all these different websites that has auction deals because this company doesn't want to deal with them because they're not profitable. Okay? They're the worst deals. There's no money to be made in those deals for anybody, which is why they haven't been sold yet. Okay? Now, is it possible to find a diamond in the rough? Of course. It could happen. Okay? If you look at 1,000, there's probably 100 with some potential. Out of that 100, there's probably 10 that you would ever actually want to do out of 1,000. So the third thing you need to know is, what's the source? Okay? Is this a tax auction? Is this a foreclosure auction? Or is this the scraped up, the scum at the bottom of the barrel from, somebody's $100 million reels, somebody's $100 million tapes, right? And if it's that, you need to know that they've been trying to sell it already for years and were unable to. So if it's your market area and you can go look at the property and you can evaluate whether or not, hey, are these real comps or is this, BS values that it's not really like the others, okay? Is this, old stick-built, stick frame farmhouse and you're comping it against CBS concrete brick and steel 2010 house to try to trick somebody from out of town into buying it, okay? I see it happen all the time to investors because, one, they get lazy and they go tickety-tickety-tick on their computer in their living room, okay? And they think, wow, I found the deal of the century. Well, no, you didn't. It just looks like that because you're not there. If you were there, you would see this house ain't never going to be right. You would see this house has 8-foot ceilings. Nobody will live in a house with 8-foot ceilings anymore. And if they will, they're sure as heck not going to do it for the same price as, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage shows, okay? So 3 things you need to know. Number 1, what is your real price? Well, Number 2, is there a reserve? And number 3, what is the source? What type of property is this? Is this the leftovers of somebody picked out all the good ones and we know it's a problem house? Or is it a bank foreclosure, back on market, something else? Sometimes you just have private sellers who own, dozens or hundreds of houses and they pass away and the kids have to get rid of them or whatever. What is the source, okay? Once you know those things and you can evaluate the deal with a clear mind, there's some great deals in auction deals. You just really got to go through them with a fine-tooth comb because of all the industry BS. So anyway, I hope that helps. I hope that cleared some stuff up. Listen, if you are into this kind of thing, if you want to buy houses dirt cheap, fix them up, turn around, make a big profit, or by the way, you don't always have to fix them. I got a webinar going on right now. I mean, I'm looking at the clock, right? I got to get on here. I'm having fun talking to you guys, but I also got some other work to do. But if you want to get on that webinar, you can go to secretlender.com/webinar. I'm doing a webinar all this week. I'm trying to do it every day this week because I got so many people who want to get on there. We're having hundreds of people a day show up because people are starting to realize, like, hey, working at a job isn't working, right? If I'm going to put up with all the hassles of my boss firing me and, layoffs and staying at home and everything else, I might as well be in control of my own destiny. At least then I'm the captain of the ship, right? I mean, a lot of people are seeing, jobs aren't as secure nowadays as people used to think they were, right? I mean, kind of we all know that in the industry. Kind of we all know that if we start our own business. But I think the rest of the world is waking up. So we're having hundreds and hundreds of people coming into our, business every day saying, nice things about us on Facebook, getting on the webinars. If you want to get on that webinar about where to get financing for your deals and what to do with that financing, make more money faster, to do more deals faster for bigger profits, check it out, secretlender.com/webinar. Hope this was helpful. Before you make any offers on any auction deals, you got to know those three things. So you're talking apples to apples, and you know you're not getting taken advantage of by you're swimming with the sharks on auction deals. Like, I highly recommend you do a couple of regular deals, right? Dealing with private sellers, dealing with regular real estate agents, whatever you want to call that, before you jump into the deep end and swim with the sharks in the auction deals. All right? I'm not telling you don't do it. I'm just telling you you're not making it easy on yourself if you're just getting started and you're diving into auction deals on your first deal, all right? So you can do it. There are diamonds in the rough. I've bought plenty of them. I've made a fortune on some of them, and I've taken my lumps and learned some of these lessons the hard way. But it is doable. Just make sure you know those three things. And hey, once you know those three things, you know what you're all in. You know what you're in for. You'll do fine. All right, great. So if you want to get on that webinar, it's free, by the way. If you think you're into this, you might as well check it out, see how we do it, see what the real business is about, not the infomercial crap and not the guys who are, book and tape salesmen who dressed up selling books and tapes and put the word real estate on the cover of the book because it'll sell more. I'm in the trenches. In fact, it's raining today, so I'm not doing any inspections, but usually I'm looking at houses right now. But if you want to get on that webinar, if you want to see how we do it, what we do and how we do it, how we get the financing, check it out, secretlender.com/webinar. Thanks very much, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.